Can a Kenyan company be 100% foreign owned? And can I, as the sole foreign director, be the only one with full control and access to its bank? And I just want to emphasize, because I think people can get uncomfortable when you're playing with the board of directors that we kind of talked about in the last video. And then we wonder, if we don't know the law, so then what kind of liability do you open yourself up to? So I think that's where this question is coming from.
This is a really good question, Martin. I can tell that you've really thought through this. So let me answer it in different facets, because it's more complicated than you can imagine.
Right.
So let's start from the general rule. The general rule is that as a foreigner, you're allowed to own 100% shareholding in a company as a foreigner. Okay. Now, the caveat to that is that if you do not have a work permit, then you must have a local director or a local representative. Okay? If you have a work, and I'll come back and pick that. If you have a work permit, then you could literally, as Ryan.Fagan, own the company in totality, not need a local director. The legal rationale is because if you have a work permit of any sort, then the presumption is that you are a resident in Kenya. So the presumption is that then they could call you and you could show up in Kenya, But if you don't have residence in Kenya, you don't have a guarantee entry into the country. And so therefore you need a local director or a local representative who would appear in the company incorporation documents as a director. With no shares. Yeah, so they could literally just appear there with no shares. Now, let's talk about this, because this is where it gets a bit uncomfortable, like Ryan said. So usually what we do, depending on the client, because clients have different needs, some clients would ultimately obtain a work permit, Some would not want to obtain a work permit for a long time, because if you're buying an apartment that will be ready in 2028, you don't really need a work permit now, So usually would advise you to get a local director. What we'll do is that, now talking about liabilities and rights and control, would draft for you a nominee director agreement. Okay? This nominee director agreement would stipulate clearly between the parties what are the rights and obligations, what are the liabilities. So would slightly alter the structure and the incorporation of your company to strip off powers from this local director. Okay? So, for example, we'd say that they have no powers to make decisions, they have no powers to enter into contracts, But at the same time, they would usually also want you to give them protection from liability. So usually they would also say, okay, give us protection that if you as Ryan then messes up in the company, they will not be liable. Okay? And usually one thing that we've seen they would usually insist is that they would want an indemnity of sorts. So they would include a clause that says that you indemnify this local director from any claim that would arise from your own negligence if it happens. Okay, so usually we would do that. What is important for you to understand is that because this person appears as a director, they would also appear in the bank account documents once you open as a director. However, because usually we would also help you with the bank account opening, we would create a resolution for the bank account and open the bank account for you in a way that clearly stipulates that this person is simply a local director and that they have no powers whatsoever to access the company, to have visibility, to obtain statements, So they wouldn't have any rights or obligations in the company. They wouldn't even have the PIN or anything. They wouldn't be signatories, so to say. The only thing that they would be required is they would just appear as part of the compliance requirements for opening of the bank account. So usually that is what we would do. The last thing that we would do, but there's so many things
people are gonna be. That's where people are gonna be a little uneasy about.
Exactly.
Need a reassurance on that.
And that's what I'm saying. So this is something that many other lawyers don't do, because you see, these are problems that are very specific to foreigners. These kind of things wouldn't apply for a Kenyan person, right? So this is why we really specialize on this. What we've also done, and what we also do for foreigners like you, Martin, is that we also create, at the point of bringing in place this local director, we create and make it for you the process for the what is it called, the resignation of this director, okay, or the exit strategy. So let's imagine Martin, you want Ryan is a Kenyan, you want him to be your local director, but obviously you could have a dispute along the way. Because Martin, you're our client and Ryan is not, we would create for you documents that are sufficient to have Ryan exit the company at any point that you'd want. So at the point of incorporation, we'd create resolutions and have Ryan sign an undated letter of resignation that would keep in our custody, so that if at some point you tell us, okay, I want to remove Ryan and get someone else, in the event that there's a dispute between Martin and Ryan, we would simply just lodge it. So that is another layer of protection for you, so that this person is not completely stuck on you. And even so, before the incorporation is done, like I mentioned, we would amend the articles of association and the incorporation documents to clearly stipulate what are the roles and responsibilities by Ryan. So, but yes, this is a really touchy subject. This is how we usually manage it so far, in the event that you don't want to get a work permit. But if you get a work permit at some point, then you'd simply remove Ryan, and then you as Martin would have full control, and Ryan would not appear anywhere.